when you have all men in a room, dumb stuff happens sometimes. So does it with women, but come on.
It's not so much. I'm going to say it's not so much that it's the dumb stuff, because they're usually really intelligent, capable people. It's the different perspectives. It's the different
That's right.
vantage points that people will be looking at it. And it goes back to that story I told about that interview process, that you put two people in a room and they come from the same point. They don't see a different point of view. And that's where the diversity comes in. It's not because the one thing I will absolutely argue against is tokenism.
Yeah.
Of you must have this, that, and the other.
Right.
Because the other thing that I used to see is, and I used to have this argument quite often, again, within politics, of we need more women. And then the women were not being selected. And I said, it's not that we need more women. We need higher caliber women. And the question we need to be asking is, why are they not coming forward?
Right.
It's not a case of putting mediocre people in, or women above very capable men. It's the question of, how do we get those extremely capable women into the same rooms as the extremely capable men? And that goes across.
And this is a classic problem, particularly in the US, because, I think that, and I don't know if I want to say this publicly, so I have to think about this, but part of the reason why we have a diversity problem in the US is because predominantly Black and brown, cities, neighborhoods, generally have schools that are not spending as much money on each student, and they're living in
we can go I'm going to say we can go into probably that spiral of poverty, crime, education going round,
right.
And then it becoming the source. And that goes across, that does actually in the UK go across demographics, but it does end up predominantly in certain areas. And it's the circumstance that then, but the issue is, and again, I used to argue this, and you could never ever get this round because everything came back to data, and you could not prove preventative measures having the same impact as those of when you're having to pay for them when it's got to crisis point. And so getting funding in the UK for preventative measures to stop that cycle was really, and is really difficult. It's not just throwing money at the problem, it's trying to stop it before it becomes a problem. But because it's a bit like the chief of staff role, how do you prove that it's actually stopped the problem until you've got several years down the line and your crime's gone down and there's better outcomes for people, etc. But the political and budget cycles don't last long enough for that to actually stay in place. But it's a huge, and education is a really, really big one. And I know you have a slightly different education system, but it's the same here in some ways, that level of education and the family environment of where they're growing up, not just as in the home, but the neighborhood, all of those external factors has a huge impact. And actually, I mean, here, one of the most underperforming groups, I think the last time I looked at this, so it may have changed, was actually what we would class the low working class, unemployed white males, were the ones who were being disadvantaged the most. Yep. Because no one wants to spend money on that. And it goes, but if you raise the education level and you raise the aspirational level across the board, it only helps everyone.